Hi, Fred.
Uh,
I think that it will be very interesting if you share your thoughts regarding the Buteyko method. I know that
sure.
you have been working as a respiratory therapist for many years.
hmm
Please share with us your discoveries as a person who practices the Buteyko method.
Sure, sure. Well, I would say that I'm been fortunate to have been in this field of health and healing from a respiratory standpoint and really being on the front lines of dealing with patients day in and day out. I felt that when being introduced to the Buteyko method, it helped me have an advantage because I was able to quickly understand the concepts and grasp the method and the application of the method because it was what I was doing on a day to day basis, but without the knowledge.
Mhm.
And combining the knowledge with my practice, I found it to be very enlightening. And some of the key, especially in the advanced course, the advanced classes of Buteyko, it really clicked with me because I realized that I had a question. The question is, with this breathing method, why do so many people have so many issues with hyperventilation? On a basic level, things made sense, but that still was a question in my mind. And it was addressed in some of the advanced classes. And that was the understanding that the connection between chronic hyperventilation, which is really the foundation which we learned through the Buteyko method, is the foundation of, most, if not in some fashion, all diseases. The big revelation is that people who breathe constantly is because there's a problem. And we all know, just like in life, if you don't fix the problem, you'll always have the issue. If you don't get to the root of the problem, you'll always have the symptoms. And we discovered chronic cellular hypoxemia is the root cause of hyperventilation. And what does that mean? Well, when we overbreathe, we blow off a lot of CO2. And because of blowing off a lot of CO2, more than we should lose, and because naturally when we breathe, we naturally lose some. But in the lungs, when you're overbreathing, anytime you're overdoing anything, there's always going to be an imbalance. And this is what this method focuses on, bringing things back to balance. Because when things are out of balance on one end, you look further down the other end, that's where you will see most of the deficiencies. And so when we say from the lungs, the opposite end is the cells, right? And that's where you have the loss, because you have a imbalance of the CO2 level, you have a lower level of oxygen in the cells, which now will promote that constant chronic hyperventilation that people experience until that's addressed. And so that was a big revelation for me and helping me to see the connection between on the lungs, how does that level of CO2 or imbalance of CO2, how does it affect on the cellular level? And so that's where it starts. In this method, helping to do exercises, helping to make lifestyle changes, practical lifestyle changes that are all health based. But the key is helping to normalize the CO2 in the lungs to really start to increase the uptake of oxygen in the cells. Because in this method, one of the things they emphasize is a concept called the Bohr Effect. And that I recognized immediately because that's what we were trained on and we studied and spoke about when I first began my career in respiratory. So it made a whole lot of sense to me. And anyone can look that up on the internet and see that it's not something that Buteyko came up with. It's something that he understood and applied to this method to correct that, to capitalize on that effect. And so that was a really big revelation for me. The second was the understanding of exercise and the benefits of exercise. If you ask anyone, most people will say, and you have to ask the question, does exercise, is it beneficial or hurtful? 99% of the people will say, well, of course, exercise is beneficial. Well, through learning about this method, you realize that that's a half truth because it's missing a key component dealing with our natural physiology. It's taking away and not addressing our breathing capacity. If you just focus on the physical abilities of a person and negate the health of one's breathing, then you're going to get, at best, half the benefits of exercise. And more than likely, because you're not addressing the respiratory component and totally ignoring it, that will, physical exercise can actually be hurtful because it's so there was an analogy that was made that made a lot of sense. It's like our breathing is similar to like a person who has a broken leg. The person normally, when they don't have a broken leg, they can run fine. But when they have a broken leg, if you ask them to run, they can't. Makes sense. Well, the broken leg is like the breathing. If you never address the broken leg, that person will never maximize the benefits of their physical agility or maximize the benefits that can come from physical exercise. And so that was another big revelation of what we do in our course as we help to bring that component into play and help a person build up and improve their respiratory conditioning. So that way now when they're exercising, they can maximize the benefits and minimize the disadvantage of not taking their breathing conditioning into account. Because that's why you have athletes who are physically fit, but because they don't know how to breathe in a healthy way, they have issues. In the locker room, you may not see it on national television, but in the locker room, they're in the locker room, taking their inhalers, breathless. The physical exercise is sapping the life out of them, is because they're not addressing the breathing conditioning. And so these are the things that we want to bring to the table and help people through this method and through our course. The results really speak for themselves. In the ICU, I started applying some of just the basic principles to really see, one, with sick individuals, far sicker than myself, if it would be helpful. And I figured if it's helpful for them, it can be helpful for just about everyone. But if you think about in the ICU, you definitely run into people who are breathless. It could be for a number of reasons. Sometimes it's anxiety. Sometimes it's because, their respiratory system is very compromised. And that makes me, think of two people. There was an older woman who was breathless because of anxiety, anxiousness. And you can see, her body language and the way she spoke she was very anxious and asking me for help. even though I gave her the breathing medication, she was asking me for help. And I said, what a perfect opportunity to address her anxiety with breathing, because we learned that breathing is very powerful. And so I asked her just to apply some relaxed breathing. Instead of taking a deep breath like everyone was telling her, I said, no, let's just take a relaxed breathing like your breathing is invisible. Also try to decrease your breathing by simply breathing in and out of your nose. And I have to say, within a few minutes, not only did you see her calm down, but also the nurse next to me noticed, thanked me very much for my intervention. And then later when I came back, she said the same. She thanked me. And you saw that her countenance was totally changed. And so that's why the proof is really in the pudding. When people understand the method and start applying it, they get the results. Some quicker than others, because it really depends on, one, the circumstance of what they're going through, and two, their willingness to apply it. There was another incident that comes to mind that had a profound effect on me, helped me to really see the value of what Dr. Buteyko was the gift that he was bringing to us. Because most times in the hospital dealing with patients, I feel pretty much my hands were tied with effectively helping my patients, other than just relying on medication, hoping that it works. And when their breathing was just the same before and after the treatment, I felt my hands were tied because there wasn't really too much more that I had at my disposal. In the ICU, that happened. There was a young woman. She had a lot of breathing trouble. That's why she was in the ICU. Significant breathing trouble. And so what happened was I gave her her medication, gave her her nebulizer. Didn't really work that well. She still was just about as breathless as she was before. So I said, okay, great. This is an opportunity to see how can I assist her further. Well, one, I noticed she was doing a lot of talking on the phone. And one of the things we realize is when talking, you lose a lot of CO2. If you're losing a lot of CO2, you're not going to help the overall underlying problem of breathlessness and wheezing. So that's one thing I asked her to, at least for a short period of time, stop talking on the phone, because I wanted to see if we can maximize her breathing and minimize the breathlessness. And I also asked her to focus on breathing in and out of the nose very invisibly. If she can do those three things, breathing in and out of the nose, minimize her breathing, invisible breathing, and refrain from talking on the phone, let's see your results. Well, I have to say, by the end of the shift, they were discharging her out of the ICU because her breathing had improved so significantly in that period of time. And it's not that I increased the treatments. The only thing that I did different was gave her those simple instructions. And normally a person that had the level of difficulty of breathing that she had at the start of the shift, would not expect them to be discharged by the end of my shift. So that was another proof positive. But those were all external experiences. But for me, I had my own experience with applying the Buteyko method. I didn't have breathing trouble. I'm not an asthmatic. I'm fairly, I would say, always been most of my life athletic. Didn't have problems with physical agility. For the most part, I usually exceeded those in my age bracket when it came to physical agility. But one thing for me that I noticed, and it kind of spoke to how this method is helpful for not only just breathing, but also for some key other areas. And I find sleeping is a major issue that people oftentimes go through. And for me, I found that I didn't have a problem going to sleep. I didn't have a problem staying asleep. But I did notice by applying this method, I found my sleep to be more efficient because I was able to sleep less and feel more rejuvenated. I mean, think about it. Who would think by sleeping less, you would feel more energetic? And we're talking about not 15 minutes. On average, an hour to 2 hours, I would easily, consistently just wake up. Whereas prior to applying this method, I was on average sleeping another hour to 2 hours longer, but feeling worse. Not worse in the sense that I was totally still exhausted, but I feel better with less sleep. And I got to tell you, that's totally counterintuitive to mainstream advice when it comes to sleep. And so these are the things that we kind of work through, helping them see the inconsistencies of sometimes things that were commonly taught when it comes to health, opposed to things that are really based on physiology, based on getting results. And that's what we cover during our sessions to help people navigate through that. So that way they themselves can also experience their own benefits. There's a young lady that comes to mind who actually was a respiratory therapist. So here is a person who is very familiar with breathing physiology, but yet she suffered from feeling fatigue. She suffered from being kind of chained to her BiPAP machine at night because she had breathing issues. And one of the things we do discover through this method is that folks who use or have to use BiPAP have a major issue with hyperventilation at night. And you would think, how do you address breathing at night? Well, in our course, we cover those things, help people improve their breathing during the day as well as at night. And this person, after a couple of sessions, she was able to no longer, by her own decision and feeling better without the breathing machine than with the breathing machine, she was able to wean herself off, based on, her own physiology, her own feelings, as well as her applying some of the principles that we teach. And so I would say that was very enlightening to be able to guide a person through that process and see in a fairly short time have some significant and major lifestyle changes. And that's how it works. Not for all. Some take longer than others, but we work with people at the level of progress that they can produce. So it's not a cookie cutter type method, really laser targeted to the individual to best maximize the stage of health where they are, whether that includes physical exercise or most, starting with just non-physical exercise and just working on the breathing methods. These are all the things that we kind of target with a person and customize the training. So it is simple, but it also is complex because there's some details that need to be understood and mostly applied correctly to maximize one's benefit. I find that most times, just when people are given the information without the instruction, they tend to lean on their own understanding, and it typically they don't do it correctly, or at best, they're not able to maximize the benefits. And so there's where a breathing specialist comes into play to really take a person's application to the next level and maximize their own personal progress. And that's what I found. Even with a respiratory background, when I was first learning this method, I found without that instruction, initially, I wasn't doing it correctly. And that's where, like anything, when you have like a coach, they're able to take their level of training and exceed that level of training and receive results far than on their own. And so that's where how we apply this course, how we apply the method and instruction of the Buteyko method. One last thing I'd like to include that it's important that people are aware of. We focus a lot on the breathing, and I spoke a lot about the improvement of our breathing condition. But one of the things I've found is that with this method, not only is it going to focus on a major component, that's the breathing, but there's also a key other component that I find when all the systems are working together is a key system that truly improves, and that is your immune system. For me, not only did it improve my sleep, but I found it helped my immune system become like almost like a improve it to the point where it was able to really help me address some further health issues that I was totally not aware of. And in the course, we speak about these things, helping a person see the connection between an improved immune system and how it can actually be like a watchdog and sniff out other problems that you may not even realize you had. And that's the case for myself. It improved so much to where it became like a watchdog and helped me sniff out certain issues that now I was able to address, that I find that it's going to help me in the long run and also improve my overall health and application of this method. And so that's the powerful results in a fairly short period of time that I noticed with myself as well as other people. And I'll just leave you with this. When you have breathing difficulty, it oftentimes leaves a person with a sense of hopelessness. And so this is what brings me, a lot of satisfaction, is because what we're doing is we're bringing hope to individuals where they feel it's no hope, where they're oftentimes frustrated by their present level of health or the lack thereof, minimizing their abilities to do things that maybe fairly shortly beforehand that they were able to. And so it can be quite discouraging, and I've seen it numerous times on the face of people. And so this is what brings me joy in helping bring hopefulness to a very oftentimes hopeless feelings that people experience. I like to invite folks to a free webinar that I'll be conducting so that way we can have a question and answer so that folks can really ask the questions that may come up oftentimes when you're presenting new ideas, and help folks really address and maximize their own health benefits.